By now, you have heard about the pilot shortage in our industry, but equally in immediate demand are aircraft mechanics. Today, we take a tour through the Haney Technical Center, located in Panama City, Florida. Coming up right now. Okay, so I'm here with David Deaton at the Haney Technical Institute here in Lynn Haven / Panama City, Florida, and give you guys a quick tour of what it's like here at the school and what the curriculum is like, and just kind of like a day in the life of a student. So, Dave, if you could tell us, like, how do you start your day off here?
Well, typically we come in, we meet in the classroom, we go over the tasks that we have at hand. Depending on which portion they're in and what we're covering that day, we maybe spend an hour or so in the classroom, a couple hours going over theory, and then we'll come out to the lab and we'll put that theory in play. What
currently is the curriculum, and as far as like the timeline for getting your A&P certificate or rating?
Well, we offer, of course, airframe and power plant program, and we have a general class that you take the first semester that kind of lays the foundation for each of those programs, and then after that you'll spend 2 semesters in either airframe or power plant, and then once you complete that, you'll move on to the other side of that. So it's about a 2-year program, depending on when you start. Right now, we are looking at ways to do some alternate scheduling and meet the needs of the community at large in different training scenarios. So
after the initial kind of intro into the aviation course, what do you typically start out with? Do you start with the airframe side of things and then move into the power plant, or switch back and forth, or how does that kind of sequence through?
It's pretty much independent on what the person wants to do. However, typically industry expects you to go through airframe first and then go through power plant. Although it's not required, those licenses are completely independent of each other as far as the FAA is concerned, and we teach them that way so that you can get one license and complete it, test, and get that license before you move on to the next one if you choose to. But because of the setup that most schools have, and from, like you said, from years ago, it's kind of just been that way, that you move from general to airframe, complete airframe, and then move on to power plant. And we typically go that route. However, we do give the student the choice. The biggest reason we go that route is because if something happens, because life sometimes happens, and you have to stop halfway through, the airframe license will usually net you more job opportunities alone than a power plant license alone will. Obviously, if you have airframe and power plant, you get the biggest set of opportunity. Okay.
And is that also, I assume because this is a 2-year course, you're not going to wait every 2 years to get more students in, so a student can jump in pretty much at any beginning of any semester, correct? So then they can, depend on, like you said, what their need is. If they've already started before, have zero experience, you can kind of just slide them in, and then it's an ongoing training, of course. So if you're at the tail end of airframe, then they'll start there and just kind of work their way back around to the next semester, I guess, when you're talking about the beginning parts of airframe?
Actually, we have a continuing enrollment. They can start with us at the beginning of any semester, and they start in general. Everyone has to complete general first before they move on to any other section. And so if you complete general and airframe structures is the next, then that's what you'll move into. However, if airframe systems is what's coming up, then that's what you'll move into, and you'll go into structures the next semester. So it continually revolves, almost like a revolving door, and that way they can fluidly come in and out without having to miss time or have an extended wait period.
So a big question that I've had over the years, I know new people moving into this, is that they often hear that how expensive, they see these really expensive toolboxes that Snap-on and Mac and everybody has, which can be upwards of $10,000. As a newbie, as a beginner into this, what can a student expect just to get into it, and then along his career of collecting tools, or even in the school program, what do you require to get tools, or how do they acquire tools?
We do have a required tool list, a minimum tool list for all students, but it is very, very basic. And I'm talking basic screwdrivers, wrenches, pliers, and ratchets and sockets. The basic little 104-piece set that you find here or there will get you through school, because the school itself provides all specialty tools that you'll need during your training while you're here. Obviously, you don't get to take them with you, but we provide those for your training. And I recommend that students don't spend a lot of money to begin with when they're going through school. Save that for the other needs that they have during their school. As you come out and get into the field, obviously I've been in aviation for over 30 years, and I have gathered many tools over the years. And I found that when you're using something every day to make your living, the higher the quality is, the better return you get on your investment. And so there are certain tools that I went ahead and spent the extra money for the better quality, so to speak. And then there's some tools, I use Craftsman, you know, my whole career. Some of my things were always Craftsman. And so you kind of get the feel of what you really need to spend the money on and what you can go down to Sears. Not anymore though. Sears, Craftsman kind of went by the wayside, didn't it?
Lowe's bought Craftsman.
Lowe's bought them out, right. But basic tools, basic hand tools is all you need to go through school.
So the program, talk to me about the program hours itself. Currently, what is the hours at Haney for this in a 24-month period?
Currently, we begin classes at 7:30 in the morning, and you're finished by 1, and we do that intentionally so that folks can go to work if they need to in the afternoon. You do have a 45-minute break in the middle of that for lunch, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. And do you kind of bounce back and forth, like when you show up in the morning here, of doing some class time and then shop time and then class time, and kind of bounce back and forth, or how do you progress through the day on that?
Well, we have basically a threefold philosophy. You have to learn the theory, and that comes from classroom and bookwork, even though people hate it. It's a requirement. And then we move to trainers, like what you see behind you there, that show the entire system together so that you can see how one component relates to the other. And then we move from that into the hangars and labs for aircraft and aircraft components so that you can see them as they are in their actual environment. Saying that, we teach in a linear format. In other words, you will start fuel systems and then you will complete fuel systems before you move to the next subject. So you're not trying to understand 3 new philosophies or 3 new systems at the same time. And so typically in the beginning, there's some lecture and some book work, and then we move on from that to our practical exercises, which is all out in the lab. And mixed in with that, there are evaluations, tests, we don't like to call them, but they're there because we have to be able to evaluate your training. And it really depends on the class as what the ratio is. For instance, airframe structures has a large amount of lab time. There's a lot of time we spend in the shop because we're welding and riveting and doing composites. So we spend a much larger percentage of time in the lab than we do in the classroom.
Okay.
However,
that was going to be one of my other questions. So, which mediums do you work with here? Do you work with everything? Aluminum, steel, fiberglass, wood, everything?
Right, we pretty much work with everything. As you go through structures, you're going to deal with aluminum and steel. You're going to deal with fabric covering, and painting, surfacing, both metal surfaces and fabric, and we do composites. We try to cover pretty much all of the bases.
Just curious on the fabric, what system, because I know there's several, what systems do you guys use here for fabric covering?
I myself have done most of them in the field, but at the time that I was doing most of my work, it was Stitz, and so I pulled the polyfiber system in, and they offer a nice little, it's kind of a practice kit that you can purchase, and so we use the polyfiber system.
If you are finding value in this video, hit the like button and remember to subscribe, as it's really important for me to get sponsors like Airworx, Aero Adventure, WingBug, Griplock Ties, and new this month, Edge Performance. And right now, Griplock Ties has a special offer for USA customers. Go to their website and at checkout, get free shipping. Enter the code EXPERIMENTAL. Let's jump back in. I'm seeing on the experimental side of things is an increase in production of composite aircraft. Are you seeing that as a request or demand on the training side of too? Are you spending more or less time on any one medium of metal versus composite these days?
Currently, we still spend the majority of the time on sheet metal because that's still the majority of the structure that's out there now. Commercially, right? That needs to be addressed when they get out there with their license. However, I have seen over the last decade a slight but continual shift in that into more and more composites. And so we bring in not just the wet layup process, which is what it was 20 years ago, basically all that you learned at school, and now we do the vacuum bagging and we do the heating,
infusion,
ramp it up and ramp it down, infusion process. So we are increasing in the composite side of that, and sheet metal is decreasing a little. But right now, primarily most commercial aircraft are far and above. The majority of them are still sheet metal structures.
One of the reasons why I want to come out here today is not only showcase Haney Technical, but to promote the mechanical, like, builder side of aviation, right? And I see a lot of ads and promotions for the pilot shortage, but what I don't think is being brought to light as much is the mechanical side of things, and equally needed is more mechanics in the field. And I'm just curious, being that you've been in the industry and you're a teacher, what have you heard through the grapevine and just being in the industry of the demand for maintenance and mechanics and so forth?
Well, as you know, I'm sure Boeing and Airbus have both gone publicly and said that over the next decade they expect to be, just on mechanics, now this is not counting pilots, they have their own report for pilots, but just for mechanics they expect to be over 500,000 mechanics short in the next decade. Now that's tremendous. As a matter of fact, there are many companies that are calling it a critical shortage that may affect air travel and freight in the future if we don't do something about it. So much so that Congress has even put forth a new bill and passed it to help fund and promote an additional way to help fund and promote a way for schools to expand what they're doing, be able to take in and graduate more students, and or offer different training opportunities.
Specific to aviation?
Specific to aviation and specific to aviation maintenance. Now, they have additional things for crews, pilots, and other crew members, but that's specifically for maintenance because of the shortage. As you know, people my age, the baby boomers, they call us, are starting to retire faster than they can bring new mechanics in, and that's what's causing this critical shortage. So we're trying to find ways to combat that. One of the ways we do that here at Haney is we're looking at ways to expand our program, maybe offer some alternative schedules, and reach out into other training avenues. Like a big need right now in the commercial world is electronics, avionics and electronics. And so we're looking at ways that we can not just expand what we're doing, but also offer additional programs. Unmanned systems, another huge area that's coming into play, and we want to be able to offer some training for that too.
So when a student graduates from here, what can they expect as far as like a first job to roll into, or which type of companies or even name brands out there are hiring right now?
Well, right now it's almost a revolving door. There are so many opportunities, even for people right out of school. VTMAE over in the Panhandle will basically, every week they're putting up postings for job opportunities.
Is that military contract work?
No, it's a civilian contract. They're an MRO. Basically, they help find potential employees for the MROs that are working the contracts for Airbus and whoever might be running around out there.
Well, let me ask you this: are these companies more like component rebuilders, essentially? So it's not stuff that's like happening at the airport. They're shipping components to these companies, manufacturers or rebuilders, MROs, to rebuild and then send back out, kind of like a receive in, ship out deal?
No, it can be certainly, but a lot of what I'm seeing in the Panhandle is MROs, maintenance, repair, overhaul facilities, where they bring in the aircraft and it needs a C-check, and they do a C-check there.
Okay.
And they take those component parts of the C-check, not take the aircraft apart, but they'll have a sheet metal crew that will go in. They'll have an interior crew that will go in. And so they get hired on in some form on a team, and that's how they usually get started. A lot of times when they get started, they have to do a 3-month familiarization course, and they may send them somewhere else to another operation to get that FAM course, and then they'll come back here and go to work. A lot of our recent graduates have gone to work somewhere in the VTMAE world. And they're opening a new facility, or are going to break ground on a new facility in Pensacola this year, supposed to. It's going to bring even more jobs to the area.
Okay. And what are some of the maybe more colorful jobs people have gotten kind of in the fresh start into, whether it's a large corporation or a small, I don't want to say mom and pop, but a smaller business that may be commercial but still GA related or whatnot?
Well, I can tell you a few really unusual jobs. I've been in the education portion of this world for about 17 years, and I had one student that, as soon as he came in the door, he said, I'm going to work for helicopters. I'm going to work on helicopters in Hawaii. And I said, well, that's, everybody wants to do that, so good luck. And you know what? He was just very diligent, and when he graduated, the very first place he went to Hawaii, and he started working on helicopters, and he still is to this day. Some unusual things that people may not think about is I've had students that One of my students graduated and went to work for Disney World or Disneyland, one of the Disney places, on their hydraulic systems. Most of their rides are hydraulically actuated to some degree, and he went in as a hydraulic mechanic and did well and enjoyed it. Had another student that went to work for a major electrical power producer, because the big turbines that they run that produce our power are just like a jet engine, except they run on steam rather than running on jet fuel. And so he was a turbine engine mechanic, but for a power company, on a big turbine engine that was mounted to the floor and ran a big generator.
Interesting.
And the other neat one that I had early in my career, he went to work for NASCAR, because they work with exotic metals in NASCAR, and guess what we work with? Exotic metals. So they took that A&P as a foundation, and that's how he got into that field. Now, other than that, there are a lot of job opportunities. If you like to work in the wilderness, Alaska is always hiring if you can deal with the cold. And a lot of the Midwest companies that do logging and things like that, you'll actually fly in and you'll be encamped with the aircraft as it works for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you'll get 3 or 4 weeks off outside. So the opportunities are almost endless. And then travel, most companies now have some sort of travel, but this certificate, some people may not know, will allow you to work on any U.S. registered aircraft wherever it might be. So some of our students get out and they get a little bit of experience, and now they live in Hong Kong and they're working on a major carrier's aircraft that is stationed in Hong Kong. So the license is good worldwide as long as it's a U.S. based aircraft.
Okay.
Well, there are many reports out there, and the national average that's published ranges from $18 to $22 an hour for a fresh out of school graduate. Our graduates I've seen lately that actually they are pushing the high side, if not more. Even regionally, you can get 24 walking right out of the door of school. And the reason for that is the shortage. If you have a high demand and a high complexity job, it generally will bring a high wage. So wages are creeping up with the same amount of time that we pass in a critical zone of shortage. And so that's been my experience. Officially it's 18 to 22 nationally. I've seen 24 regionally from students that have graduated right here. And then on the top end of that, I have seen many folks get into the 6-figure mark when they get halfway through their career and just move on from there. It's a field that almost is, I won't say it's limitless, but it seems that way in a lot of ways, depending on what you need and what you want to do. Most companies will work you right now as much overtime as you're willing to work, and of course that feeds into that. And also the opportunities that are there. Once you get just a little bit of experience, you get 18 months of experience, and you really have a lot more doors open up to you globally and nationally.
David, if somebody wanted to find more information specifically about Haney and what they have to offer, where can they go to get that information? What's the website and so forth?
We're a part of Bay District Schools, and so they can go to the Bay District Schools website, and that website where it lists schools will list Haney as well, and that's a direct link to our website. Once you get there you can look at programs and aviation, and then we have our own section for aviation, give you a lot of details about tuition and classes and when they start and how long they run, specific to aviation. Additionally, I would love for anybody that's interested to make an appointment with me, come down, get a personalized tour of the facility, and answer any questions that they may have.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that tour of Haney Technical Center and learned a little bit about what it's like to be a student there and also to be a student of aviation. I want to take a moment to highlight the other need, and that is, in fact, the mechanics. Because you absolutely need the mechanics to keep the aircraft flying so that the pilots can fly the aircraft. So maybe share this video with other people that are considering getting into aviation at the mechanical level, or maybe the younger crowd and kids that are not sure what they want to do yet, but they like aviation, and just help me inspire other people to get into this awesome world of aviation. If you want to start at the builder side and build an aircraft, get some kids involved, get some high schools involved, but let's get people working again with their hands instead of just staring at screens all day long or playing video games, which that develops certain skills too, don't get me wrong, but just to get out and to start creating things, because this is going to become a lost art one day. Sheet metal work is going to become a lost art. Everything's going to be printed in the way probably not too distant future. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed this video. If you are brand new here, I invite you right now to like this video, hit the subscribe button, If you are a returning subscriber, I thank you for continuing to follow along and support this channel. I really appreciate you. I'll see you in the next episode.